Good to see you again on our channel. Sitting in a darkly lit room, John Paul Jones, the mysterious and reserved bassist and keyboardist of Led Zeppelin, wears an expression that combines nostalgia with unease. He opens up about his friendship with John Bonham, the band's pulsating core and most unpredictable force, for the first time in decades today. When Jones thinks back on Bonham's life, she doesn't sugarcoat the brutal realities of his genius, his struggles, and the path of strife that followed him everywhere he went. Let your mind wander to the late 60s, when Led Zeppelin first appeared. Their sound revolved around drummer John Bonham, whose technical prowess and raw strength revolutionized rock percussion. His resounding drums on songs like When the Levee Breaks and Moby Dick were more than simply background noise. They were the driving force behind the band's signature sound, which catapulted them to legendary status. Contrarily, a man of contrast stood behind the drum set. Bonham exhibited an unstoppable and vicious performance on stage. He had a complicated and unpredictable demeanor off stage, one that motivated and tired people equally. His charisma and sense of humor won him many friends, but the band often found themselves arguing with him due to his explosive temper and lack of self-control. Led Zeppelin's dynamic, according to John Paul Jones, was a dangerous mix of chaos and brotherhood. The inseparable link between the band members was strengthened by their collective ascent to stardom. However, tensions existed beneath their unity and frequently threatened to separate them. John Bonham's explosive temperament and unwavering precision brought them immense success with his booming drumming, but he was also at the center of many of these clashes. As time went on, tensions rose due to Bonham's obsession with accuracy. Although his drumming was unmatched in strength and expertise, his bandmates were frequently tested to their limits by his dogged quest of perfection during practices. Robert Plant, whose carefree attitude to music occasionally clashed with Bonham's strict demands, found Bonham's passion to be particularly stifling. When the explosive tempers of Bonham and Plant were about to explode, Jones, who usually played the role of the calm mediator, found himself in an awkward position. Unspoken but palpable tension lurked in the air during these sessions, building to the point where a single slip-up could set off a chain reaction. Conflict also arose from Bonham's battle with authority. This affected his interactions with each member of the band uniformly. Producers, crew personnel, and even the band's meticulous and somewhat dictatorial guitarist, Jimmy Page, were able to make him squirm whenever they tried to tell him what to do. Page and Bonham had numerous disagreements during recording because of Page's obsession with perfection, which was comparable to Bonham's. Minor disputes over tempo, arrangements, or song interpretation would soon turn into full-blown brawls amongst them. While Bonham's defiance reflected both his pride and his displeasure with being governed, the controlling approach of his age simply served to infuriate him more. The close-knit dynamic of Led Zeppelin was not immune to Bonham's explosive outbursts. Plant was frequently Bonham's scapegoat because of his magnetic presence and the fact that he kept the band on its toes. On tour, Bonham's blazing intensity and Plant's laid-back demeanor made for an explosive combination. Each man was unwilling to back down as late-night confrontations broke out over various topics, including set lists and lifestyle choices. The band felt a storm cloud of tension hanging over them from these conflicts, even though they were usually addressed through grief. Always the diplomat, Jones reflects on how he felt squished between Bonham's unbridled enthusiasm and his own reserved nature during these disputes. He observed how Bonham's intransigence served as an exemplar of his creativity while simultaneously obstructing any possibility of collaboration. As Bonham's inflexible standards collided with the band's urge to progress, what should have been moments of creative synergy occasionally turned into bouts of irritation in the studio. Bonham presented Led Zeppelin both an opportunity and a threat. His pounding on the drums laid the groundwork for their sound and gave them the energy to reach the peak of rock music. His inability to control his emotions, his battles with authority, and his erratic behavior made him a formidable obstacle. The cohesion of the band was precarious. The fire that made Bonham famous drained him to the bone. Being on tour with Led Zeppelin was an electric roller coaster of excess and adrenaline, a spectacle of venues packed to capacity, thunderous ovation, and an overwhelming feeling of power. The constant motion of touring, however, did more than stimulate Bonham's imagination. It also nourished his demons. As the band continued to ride the wave of their unprecedented success, Bonham's drinking problem cast a long, dark shadow over the celebration night after night. Even times of victory could devolve into hotbeds of tension as what began as joyous festivity descended into anarchy. Not for the proper reasons did Bonham's drinking binges become notorious. Although Bonham's bandmates would sometimes have a drink to relax, his drinking would frequently cross the line into destructive behavior. He appeared to be driven even farther into excess by the adrenaline rush of the road and the pressure to succeed. Nights that started off with friendship often ended in tragedy because to Bonham's erratic mood swings, which transformed the once joyful atmosphere into something much more dangerous. Everything changed in an instant when someone misunderstood a joke or saw a slight exaggerated, turning what should have been a night of laughter into a hot wire of tension. As Bonham vented his feelings, the hotel rooms went from being opulent getaways to places of devastation. Televisions were tragically destroyed, walls were punched, and furniture was tossed to the floor. While onlookers may have chalked up Bonham's destructive behavior to the hedonistic excess of a rock star, those close to him recognized it to be far more sinister. Underneath the mayhem of the moment, his tantrums were more than simply displays of defiance. They were screams for assistance. Under the influence of drink and the relentless weariness of continuous travel, arguments flared up regularly. On those nights when their friendship appeared to be hanging by a thread, John Paul Jones vividly recalls these events. Even a minor annoyance could set off Bonham's explosive temper, which would then affect the rest of the band negatively. Never one to back down from a diplomatic effort, Jones frequently found himself torn between Bonham's fervor and the frustration of his comrades when trying to de-escalate these situations. What broke Bonham's heart the most was the impact these events had on his relationships with other band members. Even if the music was becoming better, the rifts in their relationship got wider with each tour. Those close to Bonham began to worry about him because of his unpredictable behavior, which turned joyous occasions into tense ones. As a result of Bonham's unpredictable behavior, the band's chemistry started to weaken behind the scenes. For Led Zeppelin, the road served as both a platform and a battleground. It was a time when Bonham's genius was on full display, but also when his hardships were most obvious. The constant motion of touring magnified all facets of his character, including his charisma, energy, and inner conflicts. As the miles piled up and the pressures intensified, Bonham's life on the road turned into a ticking time bomb, ready to detonate at any moment as they ventured farther into the mayhem of their triumph. A problem in his personal and professional life alike, Bonham's alcoholism affected every aspect of his existence. His personal life was a battlefield where addiction frequently triumphed, in contrast to his controlled and masterful drumming. While he struggled to manage the demands of celebrity, he experienced strain in his relationships with his family. Jones remembers Bonham being really vulnerable when he would talk about how his lifestyle was affecting him. When it happened, the drummer let his larger-than-life image fall away, showing an individual struggling with self-doubt and the pressures of being a rock and roll legend. However, those seconds were brief, as Bonham would frequently hide behind his bluster, either because he was too ashamed or too weak to face his problems head-on. The rhythm section of Led Zeppelin wasn't only John Bonham's drumming, it was the music itself. The intensity of the band's every resounding beat and complex fill drove them to new heights. His genius was obvious, but so was the price he paid for it. Bonham's brilliance was both an advantage and a disadvantage. An intensity that he brought to whatever he did, and it affected everyone around him as well as himself. The band had both opportunities and obstacles due to Bonham's unparalleled talent. His irreplaceability was matched only by the intensity of his invention, which could elevate the most basic rhythm to a whole new level. While he was instrumental in the band's success, his perfectionist streak occasionally caused tension, a sobering illustration of how erratic and brilliant are frequently complementary traits. These experiences are recalled by John Paul Jones with a blend of wonder and exhaustion, reflecting the dichotomy that characterized Bonham's role in the band. Bonham's impact exemplifies the multifaceted nature of talent. His wild and unrestrained drumming became the pulse of a generation, but the same intensity that enthralled listeners all around the globe frequently left his closest associates in a state of shock. Jones' introspections provide light on the mythological figure as a flawed human being whose virtues and vices were so intrinsically linked that they became one. There was an invisible toll for every pioneering track, a moment of struggle for every victorious performance. The price Bonham paid for becoming famous went much beyond his music. The dynamic he generated with his raging personality and inner struggles was both motivating and draining. In his story, Jones doesn't sugarcoat the fact that Bonham's great qualities were also part of his downfall. His life's narrative is just as intricate and multi-layered as the music he composed. It is one of success and hardship. The heartbreaking truths revealed by John Paul Jones about Bonham serve as a sobering reminder of the toll that genius has on human lives. An ode to Bonham's peerless ability and a lament for the toll it took are both included in his legacy. He was the driving force behind Led Zeppelin's music, an amazing individual that catapulted their music to the level of legendary greatness. However, for individuals who were there for him throughout the journey, his brilliance was both an inspiration and a cause of great sorrow. As time has gone on, Bonham's achievements have been ingrained in rock history, but the price of immortality serves as a sobering reminder of the precariousness that frequently comes with brilliance. The tale of a man whose genius, energy, and profound influence shaped not only an era, but the very core of rock and roll, lives on in his music and his life.